Frustration boiled over, and it did not come from the gallery, it came straight from the dais. Congressman Hank Johnson of Georgia delivered a blistering condemnation of what he says is a growing assault on constitutional rights, civil liberties, and democratic accountability in the United States. His message was not subtle. He said plainly that he is ashamed of what Congress is doing to this country. If you want deeper, clearer breakdowns of moments like this, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss the context behind the headlines.
Is not germane and is out of order. Is there further discussion on the amendment of the gentleman from Maryland? The gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has been a quite eventful year so far. It was rung in with a bang by this administration with the enthusiastic support of constitutionalists on this committee. An attack, an unconstitutional attack on a sovereign country, an invasion and a bombing of a country, a declaration of war, which is only within the power of Congress to do, but nevertheless, this president has done it with your enthusiastic support, declared war on the nation of Venezuela and kidnapped its leader and brought him to America to face trumped-up charges, a pretextual indictment issued last week in the Southern District of Georgia, New York. And then after that, we have a woman who is executed on the streets of our nation by ICE agents, unleashed to invoke terror in our communities throughout this country. A woman, innocent woman, 37-year-old, has lost her life. And today, this committee is taking up legislation first to deny bond, a signature bond, cashless bond, to peaceful protesters. And then you pass legislation that would hold groups that would try to help peaceful protesters get out of jail on bond, since you've denied signature bonds. Then you're going to prosecute those groups for insurance fraud. That's the legislation that we passed today. And then on top of that, now we get to a piece of legislation that is going to cost the American people money. It's going to make their food more expensive, in addition to adversely affecting their public health and safety with this legislation, the Sunshine for Regulatory Decrees and Settlements Act. This is what this Congress is doing during the early days of 2026, which is a repeat of the horror film of 2025, doing nothing to make prices more affordable, doing nothing to lower costs for families, doing nothing to help people get affordable health care, doing nothing to protect their First Amendment rights, doing everything to deprive them of their rights. This is what this Congress will be about, I guess. The way you start is the way that you finish. And this is an election year. And so all my friends on the other side of the aisle are doing is passing red meat legislation that they think appeals to the American people, but the American people are waking up. They are awakening to the fact that they've been hoodwinked. They have been deceived, lied to, tricked. He told them that he was going to release the Epstein files. He did not do it, still has not done it, even though Congress has passed a law and he's signed a law compelling his own administration to release the files. He's failed to do that. He's failed. He lied about keeping costs low, hasn't done a thing. In fact, prices have gone up. And you know what else has gone up? His net worth. Net worth increased by $3 billion. Where do you think that money came from? Where do you think his net worth came from? And by the way, did your net worth go up? It went down as prices have gone up. rich have gotten richer, the middle class has shrunk, and the poor getting poorer, and it's getting harder to get to the middle class. But yet there's a party going on by those folks who are at the White House and at the Kennedy Center, awaiting the gilded ballroom that this president is building after deconstructing the East Wing of the White House. It is outrageous what's going on in this country, and it's business as usual in this committee. And quite frankly, I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed of what we're doing to this country, the 250-year anniversary of the Declaration of Independence from a king. And here we are subjugating ourselves to a 21st century king who goes by the name of Donald Trump.
Gentleman's time has expired.
And with that, I will
Is there
yield
further
back.
discussion on the amendment in the nature of a substitute? Seeing none, the question is on the adoption of the amendment in the nature of a substitute. This will be followed immediately by a vote on reporting the bill. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no.
No.
Johnson's remarks came during a House Judiciary Committee debate over multiple pieces of legislation, including measures related to bail, protest activity, and regulatory oversight. What unfolded was not just a policy disagreement, but a sweeping indictment of the direction of the federal government under the Trump administration and its allies in Congress. Johnson framed the moment as part of a larger pattern, one he argues mirrors some of the darkest chapters in American history. He began by pointing to what he described as unconstitutional uses of executive power, accusing the administration of engaging in military actions abroad without congressional authorization. While the administration disputes that characterization, Johnson's argument centered on the Constitution's clear assignment of war powers to Congress, not the president. His point was less about one specific incident and more about what he sees as a dangerous erosion of checks and balances. Subscribe now if you want continued coverage that explains how these constitutional debates actually affect everyday Americans. Johnson then turned sharply to domestic issues, especially immigration enforcement and protest rights. He referenced the recent death of a woman during an encounter involving federal immigration agents, describing it as a homicide and emphasizing that she was unarmed and not accused of a serious crime. While investigations are ongoing and legal conclusions have not been finalized, Johnson's focus was on accountability and the fear he says aggressive enforcement tactics are creating in communities. From there, he connected that incident to legislation before the committee that would restrict access to bail for certain protesters and impose liability on organizations that help pay bail for indigent detainees. Johnson argued that these measures would not just target violent offenders, but would also chill peaceful protest, a core First Amendment right. He reminded the committee that bail funds played a critical role during the civil rights movement when activists were routinely arrested for nonviolent protests and relied on community support to secure their release. According to Johnson, redefining bail funds as insurance products could expose nonprofit organizations, churches, unions, and civil rights groups to criminal or civil penalties simply for helping peaceful demonstrators. He warned that this approach risks criminalizing solidarity itself. The congressman then shifted to the political implications, noting that 2026 is an election year and accusing the majority of advancing what he called red meat legislation, designed to energize a base rather than solve real problems. He argued that voters are beginning to recognize a gap between campaign promises and governing outcomes, particularly on issues like cost of living and transparency. Johnson pointed to the administration's repeated promises to release high-profile investigative files and lower prices, saying neither has materialized. He contrasted rising consumer costs with reports of increased wealth among the nation's richest individuals, framing it as evidence of an economy that benefits those at the top while squeezing the middle and working classes. If you want continued coverage that breaks down who wins and who loses in Washington, don't forget to subscribe. In one of the most striking moments, Johnson invoked history, reminding the committee that the nation is approaching the 250th anniversary of its independence from monarchy. He warned that Americans should be wary of concentrating power in any single leader, regardless of party, and urged lawmakers to reflect on whether their actions honor or undermine democratic principles. As his time expired, Johnson concluded with a stark declaration, saying he is ashamed of what Congress is doing to the country. The committee then moved on to procedural votes, but the tension in the room underscored how deeply divided lawmakers are over the future of civil liberties, executive power, and public trust. Moments like this are not just about partisan clashes, they are about the fundamental rules that govern American democracy. If you value reporting that explains why these debates matter and how they affect your rights, make sure you subscribe to the channel for continued in-depth coverage.